Imagine walking more than 30 kilometers a day under the scorching sun, with armor, shields, spears, and still ready to fight at a moment's notice. Now imagine doing this on an empty stomach. Impossible, right? For Roman soldiers, survival depended not only on the sword, but on what was on the plate. The victory began in the mouth. In this video, you'll find out what really supported the largest army in antiquity and why even food was a weapon. Far beyond swords and shields, Rome's force marched on grain. Grains, especially wheat, were the heart of military food. The Latin word frumentum was used to refer to grain stocks, which made up to 75% of the weight of a legionnaire's daily rations. Interestingly, even in difficult times, barley, considered a second-rate food, was avoided as much as possible. It was considered appropriate only for animals or as a form of humiliating punishment. If a soldier was given frumentum mutatum, it meant losing the right to wheat and eating barley. It was the equivalent of saying, "You have fallen from grace." In times of emergency, there was no choice. Barley became the forced sustenance of the troops. 2 episodes show this with brutal clarity. During the siege of Dyrrhachium, Caesar's troops were forced to consume barley so as not to succumb to starvation. And so did Octavian's men in the Dalmatian campaign in 34 BC. Eating barley in these situations wasn't just a nutritional sacrifice, it was also a blow to morale. In the Roman mentality, it was horse food, not warriors. For the soldiers, each handful of wheat represented dignity. Losing this was like losing one's identity as a combatant of Rome. Wheat was a symbol of belonging to the elite of the army. Barley, by contrast, symbolized failure, shame, or collective punishment. In addition to the grains, the soldiers also received bucellatum, a type of hard, simple, and resistant biscuit made only with flour, water, and salt. It was baked twice, which made it virtually indestructible and perfect for long marches, so hard that many soldiers dipped it in water or wine to get it chewed. Still, it was a quick source of energy, easy to produce on a large scale, and it saved lives when all else failed. And if this part of the story made you see what a Roman soldier really faced on his skin, in his pride, and even on his plate, then it's worth your support. Leave the like right now, because it shows YouTube that this content needs to reach more people like you. And if you love discovering the hidden backstage of history, subscribe to the channel now. Here, each video is a march alongside the legions, revealing what the books hide. You're not just watching. He is part of that legion. But a legion was not fed only with dry bread and grains. Meat was also essential, and obtaining it often meant going out hunting with your bare hands. During campaigns in hostile or isolated regions, Roman soldiers would venture into the forests in search of wild boars, deer, rabbits, and any animal that could be slaughtered and turned into food. It was a survival practice, but also a form of training. Hunting required silence, teamwork, focus, and endurance, essential qualities on any battlefield. In addition to hunting, there was a less heroic but even more common method: confiscation. Roman armies often took cattle and pigs from local populations wherever they went. It wasn't charity, it was strategy. It was necessary to support thousands of men in constant march, and the resources of the conquered towns and villages ended up serving at the table of the legions. Among all meats, pork was the most valued. Cheap, abundant, easy to preserve. It could be salted, smoked, made into sausage or bacon. Salt was the secret of durability. The salted meat could last days or weeks without rotting. And there was still another advantage. Pig fat was also used in the manufacture of biscuits and in the cooking of other foods. It was more than food. It was fuel. Not all meat came from the forest or from conquered villages. There was also a very special kind of meal, the one that grew out of ritual. Before major battles, the Roman army held religious ceremonies called suavitaurilia. in which oxen, pigs, and sheep were sacrificed to the gods in search of protection and victory, but the blood spilled was not wasted. After the sacrifice, the meat was prepared and divided among the soldiers as part of the celebration. It was, at the same time, a spiritual act and a way to physically strengthen the troops. This sacrificial flesh carried a deep meaning. Eating from it was like sealing a pact with the gods. And for many legionaries, this meal had a special taste of honor, faith, and belonging. It was more than nutrition. It was a ritual of war. Another curious element of the Roman diet was garum, an extremely popular fermented fish sauce that was specially supplied by the commander to the troops. This sauce was what gave flavor to food, especially the simplest or driest ones. Rich in protein, minerals, and medicinal properties, garum was considered almost a salty elixir. Its smell was strong, but its value priceless. Even with a limited diet, the Romans knew how to extract the most flavor and energy from what they had, and sometimes even the gods participated in the meal. A Roman soldier did not live on flesh alone. In many long campaigns or in times of scarcity, legumes became fundamental allies in the survival of the troops. Beans, lentils, and peas appeared frequently at meals, especially among low-ranking soldiers. They were inexpensive, easy to transport, and extremely nutritious, especially for their high protein and fiber content. These grains were also easy to pick. In cloth bags or wax-sealed ceramic pots, they could last for weeks without losing nutritional value. In addition, vegetables such as garlic, onions, turnips, cabbage, and even cabbage appeared when available, often grown in makeshift gardens near the camps. They were considered simple foods, almost unworthy of being cited by ancient sources, but essential for dietary balance. Fruits, on the other hand, occupied an ambiguous place. They were almost never part of the regular military rations, but that doesn't mean that soldiers didn't consume them. On the contrary, when the opportunity arose, they gathered figs, dates, apples, or grapes on the outskirts of conquered villages, or bought them from traveling merchants who followed the armies. Dried fruits, such as dried figs, were especially valued for their durability and energy value. These complementary foods guaranteed diversity to the diet and supply of essential vitamins. They were the difference between resisting with force or fall due to weakness. While the generals strategized, there was a silent but constant ally accompanying the Roman legions: cheese. Produced from the milk of cows, sheep, or goats, cheese was not just food, it was a practical and nutritious solution for long journeys. Despite not receiving as much attention in official records, it appears in sources such as the Historia Augusta, alongside essentials such as salted meat and sour wine. A powerful indication of its value. More than a delicacy, cheese was efficient, lightweight, easy to transport, weather-resistant, and rich in protein and calcium. It was ideal for the rigors of the military campaign. And the archaeological evidence speaks for itself. Juicers and cheese presses have been found at several military sites, indicating that the soldiers themselves produced the food in the camps in small quantities with the milk of animals captured or confiscated during the marches. Each contubernio, a group of 8 soldiers who shared a tent, also shared tasks such as cooking, preserving, and sharing food, and cheese fit perfectly into this collective model, being able to be shared, stored, and consumed without waste. Even without the glamour of meat or the status of wheat, cheese maintained its firm presence in the Roman diet. It was the food of resistance, of routine, of the simplicity that sustained the empire in practice. To a Roman legionary, water was more valuable than gold. But drinking pure water at that time was often risking one's own life. Contaminations, bacteria, invisible diseases. Therefore, a simple, effective, and nothing sophisticated Posca, a mixture of water, sour wine and vinegar, diluted until the taste becomes almost unbearable. But it was this acidity that made it a silent weapon against disease. The Posca was not a luxury drink. It was of the poor, of the soldiers, despised by the Roman elites, but adored by the battalions. In addition to killing microorganisms, it was energetic, refreshing, and cheap. What's more, spices such as coriander, thyme, and oregano could be added, which not only improved the flavor, but also brought medicinal properties. Modern studies show that it was rich in antioxidants and vitamin C, something vital for troops exposed to extreme fatigue, injuries, and endless marches. Each soldier carried his skin or canteen with Posca, and the liquid was consumed throughout the day in small portions. It was, at the same time, hydration and nutrition, and also a symbol of class. To drink Posca was to identify with those who carried the weight of the empire on their backs. She was bitter, but those who marched with Rome learned to call it a relief. Can you imagine an entire army being kept standing by salt? It seems exaggerated, but it is not. Salt was much more than seasoning. It was life. It was preservation. It was currency. With it, the Romans were able to preserve meat, fish, cheese, and even vegetables for weeks, essential to survive long campaigns away from home. The word salarium, by the way, gave rise to our salary, because soldiers were often partially paid with it, an item as valuable as the sword itself. Salt was mixed with pork, applied to fish, used to dry and preserve food. An error in dosing or stockpiling could cost the health or the lives of dozens of soldiers. Therefore, there were precise protocols in the use and distribution of this precious asset. Next to him, olive oil occupied a sacred place. It was fuel, both literal and symbolic. It was used for cooking, lighting lamps, preserving food, and even as a body hygiene product for soldiers. Archaeological studies show that olive oil vessels were found in almost every military camp, which indicates its constant and indispensable use. In the hands of a legionnaire, olive oil could become food, a tool, or a cure. And combined with salt, it transformed the soldier's simple diet into something minimally dignified, bearable, strategic. It was liquid logistics that kept the empire standing. The strength of a legion was not only on the battlefield, but also inside the tents. The contubernium, the smallest Roman military unit, brought together 8 soldiers who not only marched together, but also ate, slept, and cooked like a family forged in the heat of war. This daily intimacy created a sense of brotherhood and ensured that everyone was fed even under the worst conditions. Each group had divided responsibilities. While some fetched water or collected firewood, others cooked, distributed rations, washed utensils, or stored food. There were no official cooks. The soldiers themselves were responsible for the preparation. They improvised with what they had: grains, legumes, pieces of salted meat, olive oil, cheese, and the ever-present garum to flavor what would otherwise be almost inedible. Meals were eaten twice a day, a light one in the morning and a more reinforced one in the evening. And even in times of scarcity, discipline was maintained. Every portion was counted, every resource shared. No one could afford selfishness. Survival was collective. The contubernium was not just a tactical unit. It was the kitchen of war, the place where hunger was tamed with creativity and discipline, and where every piece of bread or meat reminded the soldiers that they were still alive and ready to fight another day. If the sword protected Rome, it was the food that kept the arms steady to wield it. In every march, battle, or night watch, food wasn't just nutrition. It was strategy, discipline, endurance, and faith. The complexity of Roman food logistics is often overlooked, but it was one of the silent pillars of imperial conquest. Everything was thought out: the type of grain, the preservation of meat, The transport of water, the mixing of wine, the division between the contubernios, the rituals before the meal, the right time to eat. Roman feeding was as militarized a system as its training in battle. It was an empire that marched with a full belly but a watchful mind. And even in the worst situations, when wheat was lacking, when only barley remained, or when wine turned sour, the soldiers adapted. They hunted, traded, improvised. That is why Rome lasted so long. Because she didn't just depend on brilliant generals, but on resilient soldiers who knew that sometimes winning a war started with something as simple as splitting a piece of cheese or boiling a handful of lentils. Victory begins in the preparation, and for Rome, this preparation was also served on the plate. And now that you know what sustained Rome beyond the swords, stop and think. Does the true power of an empire really lie in the weapons, or in the silent discipline of those who nurtured victory day after day? If this dive made you look at Roman soldiers with different eyes, leave your like, share it with those who love the story, and comment below. Which part of this diet were you most surprised? Grains, meat, barley as punishment, the sour wine of Posca, or life within the contubernios? Your comment feeds this channel and helps us keep this legion of knowledge marching steadily. I'll see you in the next video. Hail, spectator!